This is the Convy website. This is at convy.chat. I came across this more or less randomly, but I just wanted to walk through it, talk about the things that jump out at me. The first thing is that some of this text is a bit faint. They've obviously gone for a selected versus not selected style difference. One thing that grabs my attention are these lights in the background. You can see they're of different colors, and you just saw it there. They sort of swirl around a bit separately and they come together. And it's easy to assume that this is sort of chosen just because it looks nice. It's a bit sort of organic, a bit ethereal, but I like to believe it represents this idea of remote teams coming together and being able to work together. And so each one of these people, or each one of these sort of colourful spheres could be a person or a team or something, and they come and meet in the middle through Convy chat. And hopefully I'm pronouncing Convy correctly. But yeah, that's quite a nice touch because it's subtle, it's happening in the background, it's not covering up any of the elements in the foreground like some animations would. It's helping to highlight the relevant message, the relevant text. But it's also relevant to the product itself. It has meaning beyond just the fact that it's sort of visually interesting or looks quite cool. So that's nice. It's a subtle nod to what the product is there for. It's generally a dark website, and as we go through, you'll notice it's generally an unstructured website in terms of sort of explicit structure. And so you can see here we have this, the bottom of this screenshot is a hard edge. But actually, as you get down, you see that a lot of these are soft-edged, and they've been quite careful not to have too many hard edges separating sections. I think that plays quite nicely into this idea that they've got these lights shining through. You can imagine this whole website as essentially a dark pane of glass, and there's these lights behind it that are moving around. And so as you go through the website, you see these different lights happening. It might sort of not suit that effect as well if they were having these hard edges or these changes in background color, that sort of thing. So they've used this method quite interestingly to sort of set a background color, almost theme the color of the website as you go down it, but without having any dividers. So they're using these lights more as sort of moving background color changes, which is quite nice. It's very organic and flexible if you've got the knowledge to implement it. I'm assuming it's a bit harder to do than just a CSS background change. So yeah, we've got the screenshot here. We've got a giant product of the day button, which stood out to me because I recently added one of these to a website and it was smaller than this. So I think they've gone unofficial with this product of the day button. Again, this text here is a bit fainter than I'd prefer. I think it's generally okay in the heading where you might know what to expect up there anyway. Maybe you'd put a bit more time into reading what each of these is, and especially since they're short text, it's not such an issue maybe if you have trouble reading it because it's over quickly, as it were. But down here you've got this longer text is also quite a faint grey, a bit harder to read. Maybe that's an issue. I'd probably suggest that this heading line height should be tightened up slightly in terms of if you made the line height smaller, this text would be brought closer together. It's looking a bit, the space between the two lines looks a bit higher than it would ideally be, but that's extremely minor. So yeah, like I said, you've got this screenshot fading. You can notice that the screenshot is also acting as a see-through barrier. It's probably easier down here. This pane is acting as a see-through barrier because the light is shining through it. It's not... this light that's moving around in the background is not being blocked by this box. So it's still got that sort of background light up effect, but they've styled these as essentially glass so that it lets through that light. And I assume in reality this is not in the background at all. It's actually hovering over the top, and it's got opacity change so that it's see-through, but it still gives that effect. And you might find that that effect is not ruined necessarily, but you might find that the effect feels a bit off if they hadn't done it this way, where the materials they were using would allow that light through if it were shining from the background. It's interesting that they've got these lights up the top for this section. This section down here, it's still got a heading, it's still got a screenshot. It's the same sort of structure as other sections. It hasn't got its own background light. So it looks like they were going, didn't want to go too heavy on having a background light in every section. They kept it a bit more varied. So you get this lit up background here, and then it's sort of plain black background here, and then it's lit up down here. I don't know if that's because they want to highlight specific things like more productive meetings for fewer meetings and not structured topic-based communication in groups. I assume it's more that they wanted to alternate, so not every section had a light sort of competing for attention. Yeah, so you can see that here, all context in one place doesn't really have its own background light, except you're seeing one peeking down here, which I assume is from the next section. Okay, so this is the final call to action. And they've got, again, they've mirrored the effect in the hero section where you've got these two lights, although where the second one's gone right now, I don't know. Here it is. Two lights coming together in the center. Again, they act as a way to highlight the main call to action when they come together. I'd argue when they're off to the side like this, they're actually distracting you a bit from what you're supposed to be looking at, which is in the center. So maybe they should have kept these tighter in. Here it doesn't feel as bad, maybe because they've still got lights. I think they've got 3 or 4 here, but they've still got these lights down the bottom, even when there are some lights off to the sides. They're covering the area a lot better. Down here it's just the 2, and they're coming together, and again representing the purpose of the product. So yeah, overall it's quite a simple website, but because of this approach they've taken of having sort of a single background color and changing how it feels throughout the website with different colored lights that are moving around like spotlights, that's a really interesting effect, and it takes what is otherwise a relatively simple website and raises it up in terms of visual interest.